Recorded. On air.
And you got YouTube?
Hit the recorder. Does the mic sound like they're on? Alrighty.
Okay, call to order this meeting of the Planning Commission for December 14th. Shall we have a flag salute, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Castellanos,
Here.
Sarkozy,
Here.
Engel,
Here.
Vice Chair Stroman,
Present.
Chair Willis.
Here. Okay, at this time, make sure your cell phones, pagers, any other devices are on silent or vibrate. And I guess we've got a few people attending virtually, so they know they can. Let's go to the consent calendar. We've got the minutes of last meeting, November 9th. Are there any questions or corrections or changes? Or is there a motion?
I guess I just have one comment, and that is on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On the 7th paragraph down, that starts, it was the consensus to defer to the California Building Code requirements. I mean, that sounds fine, but I just would like it documented somehow that the planning commissioners, feel very strongly that ultimately the ultimate authority in anything related to this is the California Building Code.
We didn't come to a consensus, we agreed that it was mandatory.
It wasn't a consensus, it's mandatory. Because the last thing we want to identify is if there is a conflict with setbacks or with any of these requirements. The California Building Code is the ultimate authority. It's not planning commissioners willy-nilly picking and choosing. So it's not consensus. So in summary, I think we should change this wording to say instead of it was the consensus to defer to the California Building Code, we should say that the planning commissioners determined that it was mandatory to follow the California Building Code requirements and associated setbacks. Because then that will lend assistance to, if there are any discussions on this matter, or to Mike, if as the chief building official, planning commissioner recognizes the building code, the chief building official is required to uphold the California Building Code. It's a done deal. We can't argue it. Is that okay with you, Mike?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. Those were my only comments, Chair.
Okay, any other comments? Or is there a motion
Just a motion to approve as amended.
to approve as amended?
Well, no one's speaking up, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended for the Planning Commission meeting on November 9th, 2021.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, we'll go on to the public hearing to consider the ordinance amendment 21-757. Is there a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is round 2 of carport amendments. This item is continued from our November 9th meeting. And at that meeting, Planning Commission reviewed several sections of the zoning code. Many ideas were discussed and decided upon in regards to updates. And we were looking at residential carports, We looked at commercial shade or solar canopies, and we also looked at residential garages. At that November 9th meeting, the item was continued because there was some additional research that needed to be done by various staff members. And so that was done, and we're back before you tonight with the updates that were decided at the last meeting. The sections of municipal code are redlined in the exhibits with the changes that we discussed last time. There's also some additional information that we have for you tonight, so additional amendments can be made if desired. So based on our discussions last time, it's Chapter 1712-010, which is attached as Exhibit A. This is accessory buildings. We pulled out the word carports from accessory buildings. Carports is getting its own sort of subsection right below it, and that's 1712-015. This is creating a new chapter that we decided on the title, Carport Structures Used to Shelter Vehicles, RVs, and Vessels. This is attached as Exhibit B. It's going to appear directly below accessory buildings in the municipal code book, so that people who assume to go to accessory buildings for carports, it'll be right next to it so that people will be able to find it fairly easily. At the November 9th meeting, multiple times, we talked about what is a carport, what is it used for, and it came up multiple times that it's not so much what is stored underneath it, so much as the structure itself is what was being determined, where it's okay, where it can be placed. And so staff has a recommendation to remove the specificity of what's underneath it, shelter vehicles, RVs, and vessels, and just call it a carport structure. So if someone says, well, I'm not storing a car under it, I'm storing boxes, the regulations for that structure are still the same, regardless of what you're going to put under it. Our building official did further research and found these two sections below in the California Building Code for carports specifically. So 406 3.3 carports, that they shall be open on not fewer than two sides. So that's kind of a definition of what a carport is. If it's covered on more than two sides, then you consider it a garage. So then the regulations would apply under 171210 accessory buildings. So it gives us a definition of what is a carport. And then in regards to separations, so this would be those setbacks that we spent a lot of time on last session. A separation is not required between a group R3, which is the house, and U carport, provided the carport is entirely open on two or more sides and not enclosed areas above. Enclosed areas above would be if you had like a storage area up above. So we now know that carports can potentially be placed directly adjacent to the dwelling. So when we get to the attachments, specifically 1712-015, number 8 had the setbacks. So we can look at those again and decide what changes Planning Commission would want to have for that based on this new information. In that same chapter, number 6 kind of adds in the definition that it cannot be enclosed on more than two sides. That maintains that it does stay a carport, because if they enclose more than that, then it becomes considered a garage under the building code. A question was posed at the November 9th meeting, where are these setbacks measured from? Is it to the post or is it to the eave if the carport has an eave? So the setbacks measured to the post, but an eave or overhang is allowed into the side yard setback for 24 inches, a front or rear yard more than 30 inches. And that is consistent between the building code and our Escalon municipal code allows for that also.
I have a question going back to the municipal code definition of a carport.
Yes.
When it talks about two sides, would a dwelling, if it's up against a dwelling, or say it's 6 inches away from a dwelling, is the dwelling wall considered a wall of the carport also?
Did you hear that question, Mike?
Yes, I did. I would consider, no, that would not be considered one of the two walls that needs to be open.
Okay.
And I believe, Mike, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it's, Commissioner Castellanos, the driver there is based off of the occupancy rating of the structure. So a house has an R3 occupancy, whereas a carport is a U occupancy. So two different occupancies.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, and then Exhibit C is going to be Chapter 174195, temporary structures. This is where carports were originally placed as temporary structures. So because we're creating a new section just for carports, we would remove Section B of this chapter. There is an existing definition for carport in the municipal code. It can be updated to align more closely with the building code. We talked about permanent, not permanent. If we remove the word permanent, it just kind of covers all of them, whether they are bolted to the ground or placed in cement with anchors. It also specifies about the types of things that it shelters. We can leave that in, we can modify it, whatever we decide would be best.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
Related to 17.81.040? Actually, for this particular Exhibit D, as well as any other reference in the municipal code, I think to be consistent, we need to change it to carport structures. So if we could add the word structure after everywhere the carport is referenced. So it's totally, and commissioners, I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just trying to take it back to the reference to the building code.
So as we go through the exhibits, every time we see carport, we can look and say it's saying carport structure. T definitions, years ago, we added T definitions for temporary structures for carports. Because we're deleting it out of temporary structures, we can go ahead and delete this section in the definitions. And then that's it for residential carports. Then we got into commercial parking lot shade structures, solar carports. And so we would update the list of permitted uses to just clarify that the parking structure becomes a parking building or facility. And then we add a secondary category, parking lot shade or solar carport. Planning Commission decided that the people applying for these types of projects did not need to come before Planning Commission for any sort of conditional use permit. And so it would be these structures would be permitted in the commercial zones, industrial zones, also at open space, which would be like parks, and public facilities like City Hall and the schools.
So playing devil's advocate here, if I'm Johnny homeowner and I'm putting a carport structure on my property and I decide that I'm going to put solar on top of my carport structure to generate power at my house, and if I live in an R1, R2, R3 occupancy, is that not permitted?
If someone in a residential zone wanted to do a carport, they would follow they would fall under 1712.015 carport structures in residential zones.
Is solar permitted under 17.12.015 if it is a roof mount system on the roof of their carport?
Of their carport. We don't specify yes or no in the code. That's something that can be looked at tonight.
I certainly don't want to complicate it, but I don't want a homeowner, a solar company to come in and say, oh, well, you have a carport, we can just take advantage of that roof space, and then by amending 17.11.040, it's going to turn around and get denied because we don't allow a parking lot solar carport.
The list of permitted uses changes won't affect the residential.
Okay.
I would say that if you did not want solar on these structures, then we need to add it into 1712. Otherwise, it would be, in a planning side, we would default that that is okay, as long as it can get through plan check, building code.
Okay.
People do put them on patio covers. We've had people apply for solar to be put on their aluminum patio covers in their backyard. That's fine. It doesn't have to be on the house. We've had some residential do ground mount, which also is fine. So I would, if someone applied for that on their permitted carport structure, planning would say yes. So if you don't want them, you should add in language that you don't want them on it.
I think the way we're going is for solar gaining in popularity and whatnot, we need to allow it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, with our particular roof, we don't want to compromise the integrity of it by putting solar on our house. So we'd probably put it on something else that we have on the property, and that may be the case with others as well. So on a carport seems, you know, if it's aesthetically pleasing and all that, that it should be allowable.
Yeah, I guess that was my point, is I want to make sure that we're not denying somebody, but if it's at the discretion of the planner, then I don't see why that's a problem.
So here the word you use, permitted carport. If it's a not permitted carport, and they come in for solar, we deny that?
Require them to get it permitted. So then in the process, if it's not permittable, they would either need to make alterations to it or take it down.
My take on this .040 chart is that, or my interpretation of it at first, was these structures are the large ones, like out and back here, that are not put on top, you know, not the little PV cells, you know, the 4x6 panels that you see on houses. These are structures that are engineered. Is that the intent of this chart, to focus on those?
It is. Parking lot shade or solar carports, it's not intended to be the residential style carports, because you don't really see those go up in commercial parking lots. This is intended to be more for the larger structures.
When that senior facility was looking into the property there on First and was going to put in carports, it was gonna have solar or no? Or would just something like that be okay to put solar on
It would have been,
if they had the parking covered? Because they're not gonna have garages.
They were
They're
gonna do
just gonna-
garages, weren't they? They were gonna do garages.
Oh, I thought the buildings were on one side and then the parking structures were, or that was guest parking maybe.
It was probably guest parking, yeah. And I don't know if they had determined whether they were doing it covered or not. But they were gonna have a public area, like an open space area, and then some public parking.
Okay.
so staff, my apologies for wasting everyone's time, because I failed to look at the first two words, and that is parking lot, and I certainly don't have a parking lot at my house, so my apologies.
No problem. And so these types of projects are permitted in those zones. They would still go through the planning department for review for design, and they'd go through building department review for plan check. And then lastly, Exhibit G is Chapter 1743020, dealing with off-street parking spaces. We talked about some infill development in town. When they want to do new construction of a home, our code just says covered parking spaces, which would allow them to do a carport instead of a garage. But that we thought when you are building new single-family or two-family homes, that you should put in a garage with it. And so that is updated in Exhibit G. Exhibits A through G are all the chapters that we're looking at updating. H is last month's agenda with exhibits. So if you have any questions, staff is available. Our building official is on the line. Also, our city attorney is on the line if there's any questions for them.
Well, based on what Commissioner Stroman just said, what constitutes a parking lot? How many units in a parking lot? And what makes me ask that is the houses on California, where we made them put parking spaces in. Does a lot have a cutoff number?
Which house is on California?
Oh, gosh, between Walnut and, I don't know, they're on the south side.
Is it the one on the corner?
Yeah, well, one's on the corner and one faces the street, and we told them they had to, put in cement, concrete, and make parking spaces. But a lot would be, how many?
I don't think that our code specifies how many parking spaces constitute a lot. It's more with zoning. Residentials don't have parking lots, they have driveways. Commercial, industrial, you have a parking lot.
At the last meeting, we had a member of the audience bring up that a carport had storage boxes in it where there was the likelihood of vermin and whatnot. And you pointed out that we're not looking at what's stored there or what is underneath the carport, we're just looking at the structure. And so it doesn't say that you can't do certain things with a carport. Can we put that, or should we put that in there, that you can't just use it for storage of boxes, or you can't use it as an office, or you can't use it as a, whatever is not, or do we want to just avoid that?
We certainly can, and the building code definition of a carport says that it's the structure intended to house this.
Yeah.
It comes to enforcement. If we say you cannot use it for boxes, you cannot use it. Our code already has another section where it comes to home businesses that you can't do them outside. It can't be in a garage. It can't be in your shed. We already have something for that. But if we specify what can't be under it, then somebody needs to police that they're not being put under it. So it certainly can. The choice is up to you.
Well, so if a neighbor complains that there are rats running around because of the neighbor has, what's the enforcement if it's not specifically laid out that you can't have them?
I think it would be a violation. It would,
Health and safety?
health and safety code, not necessarily the building code.
Okay.
We have nuisance abatement in the municipal code as well that kind of touches that. And so we do have carports in town that aren't screened. Maybe they don't have a fence in front of them, or they're on the side of the house that isn't screened. If it's visible from the public right away and they're storing from that, that's a violation. We do have some language in the municipal code that says if it's properly screened from the public right of way, then we don't code enforce it. So outdoor storage is one of those items in residential if it's screened properly.
I am of the opinion we shouldn't be looking to see what is stored, because you could store boxes there with no carport, and that wouldn't be an issue. And all of a sudden there's a carport and we can't put boxes. I don't think that's up to the commission to decide. So my suggestion would be to not have anything in here about what could be stored underneath there.
This is kind of off topic, but it is kind of related, so I'm gonna bring it up. And Mike, have you heard any revisions to the CBC for the residential requirements for sizes of garages? Because, I think 95 to 98% of the public would say that their two-car garage is too small these days. And I understand why they do it, but the size of garage in most residential homes these days, you can't even accommodate a pickup truck. And so I'm just wondering if you've heard any, not necessarily grumblings, but any discussion for building code as far as making the overall footprint of the garage bigger.
No, there's been no discussion. That's just a developer preference, architectural There's nothing, there's no minimum or maximum size that I'm aware of.
That is in our municipal code. Somewhere in here. It does specify the size of a garage, the size of a one-car garage and the size of a two-car garage. So if you felt like they are too small for future new development in town, this section of the code could be modified to change.
That's for a whole other planning commission discussion.
What do you think of like San Miguel, where they're all out on the street?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and I just, my own garage is, I mean, maybe I need to get rid of some stuff in my garage, but I can't park my vehicle, can't park two vehicles in a garage. You know, I just my take.
It's in there. I can't find it at the moment. I think it's 20 by 20 for a two-car garage.
I will review that, thank you.
I have a question. We're on 17-41-1951-2-015 under the strikeout of B. The first one, obtain building permit if structure is over 120 square feet. And then if you go down to the last sentence in 3, it says attached garages require a building permit regardless of square footage. What is that intent?
Because
if you go to the
the
next page,
structure is attached to the house.
Oh, right. Originally, we said structures may not be attached to the house.
okay,
And then Planning Commission decided, well, if they can get through building code to attach it to the house, you know, that would be fine. But
okay,
even if it's not 120 square feet, just the simple fact of attaching it to your house requires it to have a building permit.
okay.
So that's why it's called out there, because we say must have a permit more than 120 square feet, but if you attach it, any size needs a permit.
And if it's within a setback, it has to meet the fire code requirements, correct? Because I'm reading section where it says, rear yard structure placement, talks about the minimum, has to be fire rated and all this other stuff. So you could have a 100 square foot structure that's not attached to a unit, but it's 6 inches away from your house, you wouldn't know it's there. Would we? No permits required. It's not attached, you don't need a building permit.
It's less than 120 square feet
Okay,
and not attached, then they go for it.
unless complaint driven, okay, okay.
I'm gonna be anal, if I might. On Exhibit B, on the second page, there are 3 places where it says fired rated, but the correct term is fire rated, is that right? It's not a term I use a lot, but
Yes, you are correct.
fire rated?
And it's
Oh,
hyphenated.
fired rated, yes, no fire
There are
rated.
3 different places.
Okay,
And in the 17.411.195, if you get rid of B, you don't need A, right? Is that all there is that, is A and B? So if we get rid of B,
is
we
that
can
Exhibit C?
get rid of A?
Yes.
Okay. Done being anal. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would, if you could scroll back up, I think to number 3, yeah, where it says attached carports require a building permit regardless, maybe to clarify it, maybe it could read carports attached to an existing structure require a building permit. Then,
Oh, wait a second. Okay, it says carport structures under the following conditions. Then you've got structure may be attached. Would you rather put carport structure there? And then it would clear it up for the other, or? 'Cause you've got the,
I'm sorry, say that again?
Well, all this is dealing with carport structures. Okay,
talking about-
so number 3, if you say carport structures may be attached to the dwelling unit, blah, 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 and require a building permit regardless of the square footage.
Yeah, that's fine. And then you can get rid of that last sentence altogether.
Make it 1 instead of 2.
Carport structures may be attached to the dwelling unit or the permitted accessory structures. Approves the required engineered plans.
There's a building permit regardless of its square footage.
Requires a building permit regardless of its square footage.
Then I had a further question, and this really goes back to what we've learned about the building code for carport separation, for 406.3.3.1. So if you could go back to the definitions we were just looking at.
Are you looking at B 6.9A?
Exhibit B.
Well, yeah, just referencing that, based on learning that, when we look at do these setbacks then go away?
Correct. So these were the setbacks that we discussed last time. Our building official found further information on carports that says there does not need to be a setback or a separation between the structure and the house. So if Planning Commission chooses to follow the building code as it is, or if you wanted to be more restrictive, this section, the setback sections for the side yards, rear yards, could change where you could allow the structure to be adjacent to the house.
Okay.
Not attached, but adjacent, no separation.
Okay.
I'd like to remove that. Let's go with building code, right?
So the building code still requires the setback of, 3, right here, I don't know, you see the mouse, have a minimum setback 5 feet from the property line. There's still the 5-foot setback between the property line and the start of the structure,
To the post, is that correct?
the post. It could have an eave. And then it could have no setback. Mike, is it to just the house, or what if they had other structures like a shed? Can it have a 0 setback to a shed, or is it just to the R3 dwelling?
I have to reread that section, that code section. I thought it taught only the house, but I don't see it being an issue to another accessory structure, because there's no real hazard there between the two.
And Mike, does that change the setback to the fence at all?
No, that would need to be 5, and if it was closer, then that's when the fire rated walls would come into play.
And if there was not a wall?
If there was not a wall on the carport,
Correct. On the fence side, the property line side?
yeah, that gets down to, that's tough to define. It's still, the structure is still closer than 5 feet to the property line. So something would have to be fire rated. With a wall width, we would have to build a wall, unfortunately, on that carport side.
Got it. Thank you.
Is it sufficient to say current edition of building and fire codes, or current edition of the California Building Code, California Fire Code?
You just referred to CBC, and then that's a blanket statement off of the revisions. So it's all based off of the most current, or the permitted year of the building code.
But don't I remember that a code would come out and it would have to be adopted? So a current code, a code could come out and be in existence before it was adopted. So you say current code, if you haven't made attempts to adopt it, to incorporate it into your, or don't I remember that correctly?
So the way it typically
And there's
works,
an international business building code, right?
right, but our driver is the California Building Code.
So if you just say current editions of building and fire codes, it's understood.
And then we as the city adopt the updates every 3 years, which is when the building code's updated every 3 years, usually,
Okay.
for major updates. And then we adopt them and their addendums and everything like that. And so once we adopt those would apply anything new. But if you're permitted under the prior building code, then you're signed off and already have the permit. And so anything new going forward, as long as you have that permit, that's what the permit would protect you from, basically.
Let me tell you, right when the building code is adopted, you always have a struggle because the inspectors are inspecting to the new building code and the contractors are building to the old building code, and it creates a,
I just want to make sure there's no loophole there, you know, that it's clear.
I want to say sometimes we still get plans in that have 2016 building code on them and we're in 2021.
Okay, anything else to,
so I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. And Ann, are you still on the call?
Yes, I am.
So I think you can see what the main motivation of the planning commission is on this, and that is to align the carport structures to be in concert with the California Building Code.
Correct.
And we are doing this to keep the city planning staff in mind, but more importantly, to add credence to the arguments and discussions that our chief building official has.
Yes.
What happens if we go through this whole process and the recommendation goes before city council and city council rejects this?
Well, I will, so the building code is going to apply regardless of whether the city council adopts the changes or not.
Okay, so,
And also whether or not the city council even adopts the building code. You know, even if the city does not adopt it as part of their code, it still affects, every building permit has to be in compliance with the existing building code, whether or not it's been adopted into the city's code or not.
so the only reason I bring this concern up is because I have run into some situations where there are interpretations of city council members that the Escalon Municipal Code is just guidelines and it's not really enforceable. And I respectfully disagree with that statement because everything that we're doing for this particular section is currently in alignment with the California Building Code. And so if I could just make a request of staff that when this item is presented to city council, if you can make it very clear that the reason that we're going through this process is to be in alignment with California Building Code.
Yes, that should be made clear to the council. The council cannot waive the requirements of the building code.
Underline, exclamation point, 48 font, italicized, please.
And by the same token, a variance, even if a variance is approved, that doesn't affect the applicability of the building code. Building code still applies.
Thank you.
I think there's been confusion in the past about that.
I have a question. So at that point, it just becomes a matter of enforcement, right?
Yes. And even if something was built that was permitted by the building official, if it was permitted in error and someone complains about it, that structure still needs to come into compliance with the building code.
You and Mr. Velasquez work for the same firm, Ann?
Yes,
Could you please share these comments with him as well?
I will.
Thank you.
Okay, we are tasked with considering recommending to the Escalon City Council the changes and amendments to these particular chapters. Any other questions, corrections, or is there a motion to make the recommendation to the city council?
I have one other comment, Chair, and that is, once again, staff, thank you, and to you, Mike, for taking the time to align this and remove the loopholes and make sure things are done the right way. I mean, for one item, to have this many pages and just proves the work, hard work that you guys put into this, and so it's very, very much appreciated.
Can I just ask one question, just to be a little clear on my part? So we've got the, down to no setbacks against the house. What is the setback we're saying for the side yard? Is that 5 feet from the property line?
Building code requires 5 feet to the property line.
It can be 3 feet as long as it meets conditions A, B, C.
The building code says it has to be 5 feet off of the property line.
Unless the carport, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, unless the carport has fire sprinklers or the carport has a fire-rated wall, it can be 3 feet.
Technically, the building code doesn't dictate the measurement.
Qualifies as.
It's, if city council or wherever you want to, if it's a 0 lot line, 0 setback, then you have to meet the construction requirements, the fire rating of that structure to meet that close setback. The table in the building code says 5 feet. That's when you don't have to fire rate a wall. But if it's closer, then the fire rating comes in. So it's not, it's kind of difficult to explain, but it's not the building code that dictates the setback. It's just the type of construction of that structure. If that makes sense.
Okay.
And Mike, let me just clarify, what A, B, and A and B say is if the dwelling unit contains fire sprinklers, not the carport. That's correct, right? If the dwelling unit.
That's correct. You brought that up, and I'd have to double check. It maybe both, since the structure, the house has fire sprinklers, but I'm not quite sure on that one. I don't want to say yes or no on that. About rereading that section.
Well, yeah, I would think, the main gist of this is to protect the dwelling unit. So it would make sense if the dwelling unit has fire sprinklers.
If somebody's gonna pay for the infrastructure to put fire sprinklers in their carport, they may as well just add on to their garage. So.
All right.
Their house.
Sound okay, Mark?
It does. So basically what we're saying is the closest we could get to the fence is 3 feet if they put a cinder block wall up or something next to the wood fence on the property line.
Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, according to the building code, you can actually go 0 setback with the fire rated wall. But then again, that's when it gets into the zoning code and how on structures in that neighborhood.
I'm just trying to, last meeting, my concern was some of these limitations are not going to allow anybody to put these structures up. So I think we've come to now we understand that a lot more of them could go up on a small side yard. The 3 feet next to the fence, I don't think that is, if you're going to have a carport up close to the house. I don't know what the extra 3 feet is gonna buy you. So I would propose that the carport could go up to the fence with the appropriate fire rated.
Well, so in that case, Mike, you'd have to have a fire rated wall on the carport side, wouldn't you?
Correct.
That-
Yes.
Yeah, and it, right now, it doesn't say, oh, yeah, well, yeah, right now, I don't think we have that in there, do we?
So Mike, under the building code, they can have the carport directly against the house, because there's no separation required. And they could put it up against the fence, as long as the side against the fence, the carport has a fire-rated wall.
Correct.
The other two
And
sides are
the
open.
wall adjacent to the dwelling unit has to have a firewall as well. So in that case, they'd have to have two. They'd
Not if
have-
it's a carport on two sides, the one against the house could be with no rating. It would then have to be a front and rear, those two walls would have to stay open.
Okay,
Yeah. I think that's gonna give more flexibility to the homeowners to have the option to put them in.
The staff can make those updates to number 9, location, A3, which talks about setbacks. Also, B is the rear yard, B2 for setbacks. And it sounds like Planning Commission wants to, in accordance with the building code, allow the structure to be adjacent to the house with no separation, and also the fence, as long as the correct fire rating wall is there.
On both walls. Because if they do up against the fence and up against the house, then both walls need to be fire rated.
Well, that's what Mike
One
was
up
just
against the
saying.
house does not need to be fire rated, right, Mike? The carport side against the house does not need fire rating, even if there's 0 separation?
Correct. No rating on the house
So
side.
only one of the walls has to be fire rated. It doesn't matter if it's up against the house or up against the fence. But as long as they're within that 3 feet or less, then one of the walls has to be fire rated.
It just sounds like the one at the property line.
If it's,
Closest to the property line, that needs to be,
needs to be
that one
fire
couldn't-
rated if it's less than 5 feet away.
yes.
If it's less than 5 feet from the property line, it needs to be fire rated, or less than 3 feet from the property line?
5 feet. Wait, what was the question again?
If the carport is less than 5 feet from the property line, it needs to be fire rated, or if the carport is less than 3 feet from the property line, it needs to be fire rated?
So at 5 feet, no fire rating. To get my less thans right. If you're at 5 feet to the property line, no rating required.
Anything less,
Anything less requires fire rating.
Correct.
Okay.
4 feet 11 inches.
Exactly.
Okay, are we taking a vote, or are we just, and then you're passing along the recommendation? Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other changes? Did you want to look at Exhibit D, carport definition? Removing permanent? You want to change anything with vehicles, RVs, or vessels?
Well, the carport structure,
Carport structure.
that's what Commissioner Stroman.
Carport means it says carport means a roof structure.
Carport structure,
Or
okay,
you want to change the definition, that carport in quotes to carport structure.
yeah.
Okay.
everywhere that says carport, add the word structure. Please.
Carport structure means
And
take
I,
out permanent.
I wasn't talking when I wrote this, I was thinking, so let me think out loud. Carport structure means a roof structure with no more than 2 enclosed rooms instead of use intent for vehicle, RV or vessel, shelter, and storage of the same. It's to be used for vehicle, RV, or vessel, shelter, and storage of the same, or no, just shelter, storage. I guess that's getting back to where I was avoiding the vermin in the boxes.
That's the question. Do we
Okay,
want to
so-
specify what goes under it or not?
Well, I think we could put the shelter and storage before what it's used for. So in 2 enclosed vertical size, used or intended to shelter and store vehicles, RVs, or vessels.
There we go.
There's an RV.
Good point.
Got it.
Anything else on Exhibit D? I didn't have any other notes.
Wish you editors were, I knew you when I was in college.
So now, is there a motion to consider recommending this to the city council, all these changes that we have discussed?
So I'll make a motion to recommend the changes as presented and edited and commented for ordinance amendment 21-757 for sent to the city council to approval.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Jeremy, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay, so we'll make that recommendation to the city council. And we'll move on to administrative matters.
I have just a real quick question. So, correct me if I'm missing something here. So, in the past, we have changed the setback requirements for patios up to 10 feet, correct?
Correct, dear.
Yeah. So tonight, we have possibly have allowed a carport to get right up to the back fence that's fire rated. Is that how I understand that? Okay, I'm just trying to understand the logic of, the patio can't be any closer than 10 feet, now we're gonna put a carport right up next to the house. Yeah. I understood it clearly then.
Okay,
Yeah.
administrative matters.
I have none.
Am I okay? I didn't technically open the public hearing. I don't have to close the public hearing, right?
Good.
Okay, matters presented from the audience. Mike and Ann, do you have anything you want to contribute to the group tonight? You're the audience.
There's no audience.
Okay. Cancel that. Staff communication.
I have nothing.
First, I wanted to thank Diana for getting all this done. She's done all of it. All I did was look at it and review it. She needs minimal. She's running planning right now.
When, last month, we were going left and right and north and south, and for it to come back as concise as it was for this meeting, I was in awe.
She's been working on
So,
it.
yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, she's been working on it the whole time, yeah. So some updates, I was trying to write down as many as I could because I know we probably aren't gonna meet until the new year. So if I don't forget, happy holidays and happy new year.
Happy holidays, yes.
At our last council meeting on the 6th, we had Mayor Pro Tem Legero had indicated that he was resigning, moving forward on some other endeavors that he was moving forward with. And then we had a meeting last night. It was a special meeting of the council yesterday, where they appointed a new council member, Andy Hagan. You guys might know him because he's the local veterinarian here in town. And so we also, at that meeting of the 6th, talked about going dark on the second meeting in December, which would be the 20th. So if nothing comes up for that meeting, we will be canceling that meeting. The first meeting in January, which would fall on January 3rd, is pretty hard to get an agenda out as well because most of the staff will be off that week for New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. And so unless we have any pressing matters for that item, for that agenda, we'll also be going dark on that one. So if we don't have any other special meetings and don't have to have those regularly scheduled meetings, which we'll be sending cancellation notices out in accordance with the Brown Act, our next meeting will be Tuesday, January 18th. And that is moved one day because January 17th is Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. So that would be the next meeting if everything aligns with the stars. So I know you guys had questions on Big Boy or Orlando's Market. I haven't heard any recent updates, but the struggle that they have been dealing with is more so related to Caltrans and the exit and entering for large vehicles and semi trucks, and I don't think we've heard anything since they had a meeting. They all kind of powwowed together, discussed turning ratios and such out of driveways, and we haven't heard anything since then. But that is what is.
I heard there was a problem with the west wall. And if you look at the wall of the building, the fence, the neighbor fence comes to the east of the west wall. So the property line, either it's on the property line or it goes over the property line, or there's some.
I did hear something from the previous owner, that something was with the property line and it either wasn't recorded correctly or didn't get transferred in title correctly. But it didn't take it as that was holding up the Orlando's project. What's holding up the Orlando's project is figuring out the driveway status with Caltrans.
Okay.
So, any other updates we have? As you may be aware, through the last several months, we've had a consultant working on a municipal services review for the city. A municipal services review is required by LAFCO in order to annex any land, additional land that's not in city limits, into the city. You may also be aware that there is an approximate 18-acre parcel over by Brennan that the city was trying to move forward with back in 2008, 2009, trying to annex it and move projects forward for housing at that time. And it was the sewer moratorium that was put in place that basically held up that project. That property owner has been waiting for several years and is still waiting to be annexed. So we are moving forward with that municipal services review, which is being funded through the SB2 planning grant that we applied for through the state of California. And we're coming to a close on getting that draft document completed. And so we're anticipating that that should be coming to Planning Commission and Council somewhere in February, possibly March. It will go to LAFCO first for a review, then it would come to the cities for review, and then it would go back to LAFCO for adoption and any alterations that may need to be made. And then at that point, the city would be able to move forward with that annexation. That's the annexation that's been prioritized and or approved by the city, that we could move forward on that annexation. It has been confirmed with our city engineer that we do have sewer capacity to allow for that land to come into city limits. So we are working on that. And so then that would be some housing. The developer reached out last week. They're interested in having a pre-planning meeting. And so Diana and I are going to meet with them and just refresh everything that we talked to about them probably 3 years ago now, because it's been a while. But the original time that we had talked to them, they were thinking approximately 75 homes, single-family residential. That's where that is at.
Can I ask you a question on that? If that thing gets approved and built, is that going to push Caltrans' approval process to put a stoplight at 120 in Brennan?
We definitely feel as though that would help the city's cause for trying to move forward with that. And so we will be keeping that in mind as we move forward with the project. To try to utilize this project to gain that stoplight that's there. Yeah, originally they weren't allowing us to have it done, and they weren't going to budge on it. This project may move that forward. So we're hopeful.
Have them do a traffic study when the schools are in session.
Yeah, we're gonna have them do,
Everybody turns left on 120 off of Brennan there.
I try not to even go that way because I get stuck, and then I think it's just because it's always between the 5 and 6 hour. I can't do it, I can't make it out in time. Regarding the loan, or the city was moving forward, or is moving forward with obtaining a loan through the state for an additional well, and then we've been doing that for about 2-3 years now. It's finally been approved to be funded, and so we've moved forward with getting all that documentation completed. We took that to council on December 6th to get everything signed and moved forward, and so we've submitted everything to the state and are just waiting on that agreement. We did also award the design of our wastewater treatment plant to a consultant to move forward on that. So we've got a lot going on. When it comes to water and sewer, the city's making a lot of improvements on things that are needed, and so we're really hopeful to keep all those things going and get them done within a timely manner and move that stuff forward. I put a note on here for Irwin Village. That was the old auction yard property. It was purchased, to our knowledge, and the San Joaquin County Housing Authority is moving forward with a senior housing project, affordable housing project there. We keep hearing about it. They keep telling us they're going to turn in the application. We haven't seen anything yet. But we do know they're moving forward with it because the county has put a significant amount of their funding towards it to see it move forward. So is it $800,000 that they've given them to move that project forward? They're also going to be applying to the state for tax credits because it will be an affordable housing project in accordance with the state standards. So they'll get that, and then also because the 501c3 that's helping with that project is the Housing Authority, they'll have first round of those vouchers that come through the Housing Authority for affordable housing. And so the likelihood of this project moving forward and being done is 95%. I mean, it's going to move forward. They're just getting all their stuff together because they have to make a huge application to the state, which we've been told in the past cost them $100,000 just to get everything together. So, and they were doing environmental as well. They had to do both NEPA and CEQA, so federal and state environmental studies, and that took them several months to complete. They forwarded over a 700-page document for us to look at. So
Is there a problem with it having been the auction yard? I mean, is that?
no, this is just standard procedure in California and
That's fine.
in the
For
United
grants.
States. Yeah, for grants and any money that you have for the state, yeah.
Okay.
You're
So-
my tax dollars.
So that's kind of where we're at, and trying to think of anything else going on in town.
Well, let me ask you, what about the house on First and James? It gets built for 5 minutes, it sits there for a couple of weeks. They put 5 minutes into it, it sits there for a couple of weeks. And plus it's got a second floor. Don't we have a thing, you can't put a second story on a house if the neighbors don't have? What's the code on that?
No, that's an existing neighborhood, somebody else coming in with a subdivision, they can't build within 100 feet, a two-story house behind an existing subdivision. This is an existing lot, though.
Yeah.
And there's no windows on the second story
They've got
facing
two.
the west neighbor.
Oh, they've got one facing First and one facing James. Yeah, not one on the west side.
Not on the west side,
But
right.
for a long time, the part of the old structure was there, and I thought, okay, they're remodeling, and then it disappeared, so it's not a remodel. I hope they're not calling it a
It's a
remodel.
remodel, as long as they keep one wall up. You don't have
They
to-
didn't keep
You don't
one
have to pay all
wall.
those
They didn't keep one
extra
wall. It's
fees.
all
We
new.
didn't end up doing that.
It's all new.
Right, they were keeping one wall up, but they had discussions with us and us with them that we would allow them to keep their footprint where it is, because who wants a brand new house with one very old wall? So we prefer that they just take the wall down and give the person a brand new house, so.
Okay.
So that is an individual person, small company working on that, taking a little bit longer, but once you have that building permit, as long as you're continuing your inspections, it's good for 1 year. from your last inspection. So as long as he's calling in for his inspections, which he is progressing.
Yeah, there aren't any, he doesn't have any holdups with the
No,
city
no.
for construction. It's,
Money comes in, they spend it, they wait. Money comes in, they spend it, they wait.
Yeah.
Or
Every 2
the,
weeks.
or the employees free up and then they can,
Yeah, they
yeah.
have to wait for the wood to dry before they
Yeah,
put the paper down.
So you may recall there's a house right across the street from Dent on the corner of, is it Yosemite and Mitchell?
Yes.
And it wasn't a house, it was an office.
it was a dentist
It was
office.
a
That looks
dentist
really nice.
office. This is the same person, developer, builder.
oh,
He now purchased this house, and is, you know, updating it, revising it. He took that house, turned it into a house, brought it up to code there, and then ended up selling it. So,
looks good.
yeah, it looks good.
Looks
Okay.
nice.
Better than
So-
what was there.
So any other commissioner communications? Steve, you have anything?
No, other
No?
than wishing everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank
Thank you. Merry
And stay
Christmas.
safe.
Mark, anything?
Just for planning purposes, so if the city council meeting is January 18th, a Tuesday, what does that do to our potential meeting in January?
Ours would stay the same. Ours is January 11.
But if you don't
No,
have any
Because
applications.
this has to be after the city council.
No,
No,
we're
second
the,
Tuesday after the first Monday.
right.
Oh,
We're
okay.
not contingent on council.
Okay.
No, yeah.
As of right now, we don't have any applications.
Okay.
So the likelihood that there won't be a meeting is pretty high at this point. We don't anticipate anybody, we haven't been in discussions with anybody, with the holidays coming up, we don't anticipate any applications being turned in, so.
Okay, Jeremy, anything?
Oh, no, just thank you to everybody for the work on this. Thank you, Diana. There was a lot of communication in the last meeting, and it was, I want to just reiterate what Barbara was saying. It was a lot of information condensed in a way that I could understand it, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sean, you don't have anything to say, do you?
Never. So we, first item I have, and, you know, we can't really get into speaking about matters related to human resources within the city, but I think it's about time, and I'm speaking to the interim city manager, that I think it's about time we drop the assistant from Diana's title, because she consistently puts forth the work and the effort, and she's not an assistant planner anymore. This document speaks to her hard work and dedication. So I think we drop the assistant and just call her the planner. Moving on to my fellow commissioners, I just, without getting into a rant or a tirade, I just want to say that how much I appreciate each one of you, and I appreciate our attitudes and our consideration of each other at these meetings, because the five of us truly listen to each other. We care about each other, and most importantly, we care about the city of Escalon. And we leave our egos at the door, and we focus on our goals at hand, and ultimately, we are making decisions in the best interest of the city as well as our constituents. And I just want to make sure that the four of you know how much I appreciate that.
Are you running for office?
No. Without getting into too much detail, I attended the December 6th city council meeting, as well as the meeting last night, and it definitely feels like there is a disagreement and there is dissension within the city council. And I feel like there is a lack of respect of each other on the city council currently. And we don't have that. And it's very refreshing. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew how much I appreciated that, because we listen to each other, we take the time to listen to each other. We may disagree, but that's okay.
We're a whole different type of body than they are.
Right.
Not political, but.
And last but certainly not least, I just want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And if you celebrate Hanukkah, Happy Hanukkah. And if you celebrate Kwanzaa, Happy Kwanzaa. But I celebrate Christmas, so Merry Christmas.
I was trying to remember what Geraldo Rivera celebrates. Is it Hanumas or Christnica, or, you know, it's a combination of things, but.
Chairperson, can I ask them a question first? I have a question. Years ago, the League of Cities used to put workshops on for planning commissioners. Are they doing any of that anymore? Because I think that, for me, it'd be a good idea to get a refresher on for some of us who've never done that. And it's been several years since I've heard that they've been offered.
And I think with COVID and everything, they stopped having things for a while. Right now, they have a council member and mayor one that's moving forward. I'm sure planning commission's probably gonna come forward after that, and so
Okay.
when that gets released, I can forward it over to everybody to take a look.
I think.
And anybody who's interested, you just let me know, and we'll move forward, and if we definitely have the budget for it, then we would go ahead and send you.
The ones that I've been to, they've always been interesting, but then the application to Little Escalon is, you know, it's not always there, so.
Yeah.
But you do learn,
Yes.
Yeah.
and I was gonna say too, I come, after all the years I've done this, I still come and learn, you know, from everybody, staff and commissioners, so, like Sean said, it's, we're a good group.
Yes.
And I guess since I'm on the HR topic, I think we need to remove the word interim from Dominique's title too, but I'm just saying.
Is there any word on that?
So the mayor at the last meeting had indicated that that was what he was interested in doing, and so they were going to look into it, so. We'll see, yeah.
Fingers crossed. Right?
Okay, anything else? Anybody? All right, thank you for everybody for your hard work, and happy holidays, and see you next year. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Ann, thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Ann, thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Ann. Thank
Happy
you, Mike.
holidays. Happy holidays.
No, thank you, Barbara. This is a quick
Thanks, John
meeting.
Boy.
This conference is no longer being recorded.